What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another UFC themed edition of the Fourth and Long podcast. Today we're going to be looking at a recap of the 2019 year. But along with just the 2019 year, we're going to be giving our fighter and fight of the decade. Today I'm joined by our resident UFC, kind of just know-it-all is what I'm going to call him. I'm not going to call him an analyst. You're just know-it-all, Blake. Blake Campbell is returning to the show today. Everyone give a nice round of applause, and by everyone I mean me. Welcome back, buddy.
Thank you for that warm welcome, my friend.
Oh, I got you. I'm not. It's warm. I'm never going to bring up the Broncos game on the show.
It's okay. We broke even again this year. I'm not tripping.
Yeah, none of
You'll owe
us
me
saw
money
some.
next year, though.
Hey, hell no. The Broncos are definitely winning both games next year.
I don't think so. We're gonna have that new Death Star Stadium up and running. It's
Just
gonna be
another
sweet.
stadium to lose in. That's all that matters.
Oh, absolutely not. You're gonna be very upset in a nice brand new stadium.
Bet. All right. But so we're going to be going through the 2019 year. We got our fight of the year, car of the year, fighter of the year. Then, as I mentioned, fighter of the decade, fight of the decade. But also, we're going to end this with who to watch out for in 2020. Blake, let's get this thing started with our fight of the year. You take this one first.
For me, my fight of the year was in UFC 241, and that was the rematch between Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic.
I
I just
like
really
it.
like that fight because it just, for one, it wasn't like a one round, fast fight.
Mm-mm.
Each fighter kind of got to display their, strengths and weaknesses too. Kind of like you saw Daniel Cormier was ahead in the beginning. He was really taking it to Stipe, landing some brutal shots. I really thought it was just going to be another, dominating performance by Daniel Cormier. And then towards the later rounds, Stipe started finding out, okay, well, his body's completely wide open. I'm going to start digging in the body.
Man, that body
And
shot he hit that led to the end was something vicious.
I can't remember how many it was in a row, but it was over 10 shots, I think, in a row to like the same
Mm-hmm.
location.
But
And,
it was that what the uppercut to like the sternum that was the
yeah,
beginning of the end that landed hard.
yep. It was just great to see both those fighters come out and both be dominating at times, and then one getting his hand raised at the end.
Mhm. Well, you can't really say much. It was a Hall of Fame performance by two Hall of Fame fighters. That fight was
Yeah, and
ridiculous. I remember I
and it
barely got
leads
home
to
in time for that one, just to see.
yeah.
I never thought I'd see DC get comboed on against the cage and dropped, and
Yeah,
I was speechless for a solid 5 minutes after watching that. It was unreal to me.
but it's great because it leads to the trilogy too. Like everyone's going to be ready for that trilogy. It's going to be just as anticipated as the first two fights were.
There is
I
so
mean,
much writing on that trilogy.
yeah, I mean, really, it's their legacy. Is whoever, one person is going to be happy for the rest of their lives probably, and the other one's going to have that what if for the
Whoever
rest.
wins the third fight is definitely the best heavyweight of all time, in my
Yeah, for
opinion.
the time being, for sure.
For the foreseeable future, there's man CPO Miocic's title reign was something else. It was historical.
Well, he's still reigning.
Well, he's back on top, huh?
Yep.
Hey, I love that fight battle between two big heavyweights. My fight of the year, it was a little different. It wasn't this big back. Well, it was a back and forth, but it wasn't these big shots landing. It was what? Ah, man, I couldn't take my eyes off this fight. But this was going all the way back to UFC 234. When there was that card in Australia when there was supposed to be Whitaker versus Gastelum, but of course we had all those issues, and so the co-main had to be moved up to the main event, and we got 3 rounds of Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya, and I was honestly looking forward to this fight more than I was the main event. I was sad that this fight was only 3 rounds because I think as fans we deserve 20 rounds of this fight because it was artwork in the octagon, in my opinion. This fight was amazing. It was great back and forth. I can't imagine if Anderson Silva was in his prime for this fight, how much better it would have been. But it was the flow of this fight, it looked choreographed. It was just flow. And man, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Those 5 minute rounds flashed quickly. And I couldn't believe when it was actually over, man.
Man, that's your fight of the freaking year?
Yeah, it is. It is.
I don't know about that one, man. I think there's quite a lot of better choices.
I know there is. This one was special to me though, because it just like it didn't have these big knockouts. It didn't have these bloody back and forths. But to me, it was just something about it. I could not take my eyes off of this fight, more so than the other ones. I don't know what kept me there, but I was so glued to this one, and so I had to put it in my top.
Fair enough.
What'd you think of this one?
I thought it was a little lackluster.
Mm.
It kind of left me. It kind of left me wanting more. Like I definitely wish it could have been a five round fight for one. I know that was impossible with it being late notice
And they signed the contracts for a 3 round.
and this exactly that it was just out of the realm of possibilities. But the performance as a whole from both fighters, I just felt like it almost to me seemed like they were holding back.
Really?
I mean, Israel Adesanya was very vocal up to that point in saying that, Anderson Silva was, someone that he looked up to since he was, first getting into this sport. That's who got him into the sport, because he saw someone that he connected with, that he saw a little bit of himself in. And that had to have been hard for him to gear up to fight somebody that he'd kind of been looking at as a mentor and as someone that, was his motivation and his inspiration.
You think he held back a little bit during the fight?
Not only that, but also, like, I mean, Anderson Silva, he never really had any moments in that fight where I was like, where it was anywhere near dangerous. I mean, it just didn't seem like the right fight to make at that
That's
time.
Fair. All I know is that, I mean, it doesn't matter about the quality of the fight. It was just the fact that Israel Adesanya went in and beat Anderson Silva by unanimous decision. I think that what really cemented his path to ultimately becoming UFC middleweight champion.
I would have liked to see it finish, but yeah, at least he beat him.
Yeah. That was my fight though. Blake, you had DC versus Stipe 2. I had Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya. Agree to disagree on that. Well, but honestly, I love that DC and Stipe fight.
Can I give a shout out though
yes.
to another
Give me
fight?
an honorable mention, please.
An honorable mention for me would have to be Mike Perry versus Vicente Luque.
Ooh, okay.
That was a badass fight. I mean, goodness gracious, they were both swinging for the fucking fences.
There's some bad motherfuckers in the octagon.
Perry got his nose kneed all to shit.
It looked so bad.
He looked awful after that fight, man. And that was just an exciting fight. I remember just like always being like on the edge of my seat. I was watching it with my boy. You've been to AJ.
Yeah, I know.
We were watching it. We were hella voting for Platinum, and he just didn't pull it through. We were super.
Hey, all credit to Vincent nervous. Though. That guy put on the show.
Yeah. Yep. He did good. He had a good year.
Yeah, he did. Moving on from that, we're going to go into our card of the year. And Blake, you have a little bit of overlap between your fight of the year and card of the year, don't you?
Yeah, I actually do. My fight of the year was DC versus Stipe 2, and my card of the year is UFC 241. That same card.
Hey, give me a run through that card. What made that card the card of the year?
Man, it was a night of just really exciting fights from the prelims all the way up to the main card. For the main card, we had the return of Nate Diaz fighting Anthony Pettis in the co-main, which was I really wanted to go to this event. That was how hyped I was, because we hadn't seen Diaz fight in, I think it was 2.5 years or something.
Yeah, I remember you guys are really, you guys actually almost went, but I guess you chickened out or whatever.
Very close. Chickened out the last minute. We had Paulo Costa versus Yoel Romero.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good fight too. I expected to finish, but it was entertaining nonetheless. That's I cannot pronounce this name. Sadiq Youssef versus Gabriel Benitez.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Youssef, he TKO'd Benitez, and it was a vicious KO. Derek Brunson and Heinz. I don't really remember that fight, but I remember Brunson got a win though, so that's good
Hmm.
for him. He doesn't really get wins too often anymore. Um, Sandhagen versus Austin Sao was a great fight in the prelim card. Sandhagen looked like the real deal in that fight. And then yeah, that was pretty much it. But I
Hey,
mean, I just remember really like
solid card though, all the way
the whole
through.
card.
It was really quality fights.
It was just good matchups. Like no one was really beating the shit out of anybody, unless it was a finish.
Hmm. Hey,
Just a
yeah.
good fight.
I agree with you, man. That was a very solid card to me. My card of the year took place a couple months before this, but it was UFC 239 taking place in July at the T-Mobile Arena. This card was filled with probably definitely the most unforgettable moment of the year. But to start off, we had Diego Sanchez, Michael Chiesa, great fight. Chiesa gained the decision. Then you had Jan Blazkowicz knocking the fuck out of Luke Rockhold. That
That
was
was so satisfying.
dude. That it. I thought. I really thought this was going to be knockout of the night until the next fight when you had Jorge Masvidal KOing Ben Askren in 5 seconds. Really should have been three. Hit him with the most devastating flying knee of all time. Also, followed up with a couple super necessary shots to the face when he was on the ground.
Yeah.
Super necessary. But that we'll talk about that fight in a sec too. Moving on to the co-main, we had Amanda Nunes destroying Holly Holm. I was honestly surprised by this. I wasn't expecting Holly Holm. I was expecting knockout, but I wasn't expecting Holly Holm to get her brain totally shut off.
Yeah, that was a crazy fight.
Amanda Nunes is a bad motherfucker, and I would never want to cross paths with her because she'll kill you real easy.
Her list just continues growing.
Right? And there's Alan. She's 19 and 4, but I don't see her losing ever again, unless
Yeah. I
she.
mean, Jermaine Durandamy, it was getting interesting at
It was
moments.
getting
But
interesting, but for about 90% of the fight, she was controlling it.
yeah.
I I I I can't imagine the kind of fighter you need to be to be able to beat Amanda Nunes, let alone knock her out. And we'll see if we actually get that one of these days. But the main event of 239 was almost one of the biggest upsets of all time. That was John Jones against Thiago Santos. Jones ended up winning in the closest split decision he'll probably have in his entire career over Santos. And Santos was fighting with a torn ACL MCL for, was it 3 rounds of the fight?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
it happened in
also
the
torn
second.
meniscus as well.
Yeah, it happened in like the second or third round. I think I remember them saying,
Yeah, but
and that's just insane. And he was still throwing kicks and
mhm.
and blocking with that.
Santos did not give a fuck that night.
Yeah,
Hey, good for him. That was one of the performances of a lifetime. Honestly, I think he too bad that he tore his shit up because if he didn't tear, he might have won that fight. But he definitely deserves a rematch down the line, in my opinion.
oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, and just look at the division as a whole. Like, there's not
mhm.
really too many clear challengers for the title, so
If
he'll have a clear
if you
path.
throw that the rematch up, no one's going to disagree with that.
No, but he'd probably like a tune-up fight. I'm
Oh,
sure.
I'm sure, especially coming off of major surgery.
Yeah.
He deserves a good tune-up fight. Um, maybe no, definitely don't want to feed him to Francis first. Sweet, or France. I'm fucking tripping. That's heavyweight dog. Maybe feed him to Jan Blazkowicz, the same guy on this fight or on this card. Admittedly, John Jones did play to Santos' strengths by not taking him down and only standing up. But for a second, when the GOAT Bruce Buffer was announcing the judges' scorecards, I really thought John Jones was about to lose that fight.
That was probably the first time in my mind where I had doubt.
Hmm. I've never doubted a John Jones decision until then, and I
Yeah.
really thought, man, I it's one of those times where if John Jones wasn't the champion, I think Thiago Santos would have won that fight off of points. I really do.
Hmm.
But I guess you got that champion's advantage bullshit that some judges still like to pull.
Yeah, you got to beat a champion or whatever.
Right. I think that's one of the dumbest things. You just have to win the fight. But it is what it is. But man, that UFC 239 card, top to bottom, was stacked. Blake, your favorite card of the year, UFC 241, was also one of the most stacked cards of the year, just filled with great fights as well. But we were speaking of Jorge Masvidal. We're gonna roll into our fighter of the year and my personal knockout of the year, which is the same guy, and that's Jorge Masvidal. Before this year, Jorge's career was it kind of wasn't there. It looked like it was about to be over. He just looked like this journeyman who's lost 13 fights, and he looked like he was there, but he wasn't really going to make a championship run. But
Wasn't
after
super relevant.
no,
Wasn't
not
making headlines.
not by any stretch of the mean. But then he goes and knocks the hell out of Darren Till. Then
Yep.
he goes and absolutely disconnects Ben Askren's head from his body. And then he goes and thoroughly beats up on Diaz. And man, I know didn't win the actual championship. He won the baddest motherfucker belt. But a lot of people like make fun of that. Honestly, I was a fan of it. I thought it was great, especially having The Rock put on the belt. I thought it was awesome. But he's not a champion, so that's what people argue. They would probably argue Israel Adesanya more, and I totally see that because he's definitely up there. Israel is my number two, but Jorge Masvidal, he turned his entire career around over the span of not even a full year, and I think that's absolutely remarkable. And he also had probably the greatest knockout I'll ever see, definitely knockout of the year. I've probably watched that flying knee at least 50 times by now, and it never gets old.
Oh yeah. No, it's definitely an impressive year for Masvidal.
Do you
But
do you agree on that, or I feel like you're one of the other people that argue for the guy I also mentioned.
see, for me, Masvidal was actually option C.
Option C.
I do agree he had a crazy successful year,
Mhm.
but
Is it the fact that he's not a champion?
that is definitely one of the things that's got something to do with it.
That's totally fair. It's a fine argument.
Yeah. If he had better hardware to show for it, I think he would win.
Well, are you
Because
saying
the
that
way that he was ending
Baz
fights were-
motherfucker belt doesn't count as hardware?
It does, but it doesn't. You know,
No, I feel it.
it's cool, but it's not. It's
Mhm.
not.
It's
top
not
of the line.
It's not a gold belt.
It's not top shelf.
Nah.
But definitely something that I would still want to fucking have. That's
Oh yeah. Wait. So if he's your
let's
C,
make no
who's your
mistake.
B then? Before we get to your number, before we get to your A.
My B is actually Henry Cejudo
Triple C.
because he had
Cringe
this.
champ.
He had the super fight at flyweight to open the year.
Wait, that first card, the very first card on EFC, ESPN Plus, sponsor us ESPN.
Beat the shit out of Dillashaw.
That was
so dope to watch.
I'm glad you brought that because I almost forgot about that fight because it was
Awesome.
so long ago. But that fight was unfucking real. That was the last thing I was expecting.
Then they had a rematch, and he goes up and takes Dillashaw's belt
Right?
while he was juicing. Like this whole time he
Right?
was juicing.
Oh.
Oh man!
Then he has that banger fight against Moraes.
Or am I messing up? What was the
That was
order
for
of
the
fight?
title. The January one was for the title.
They only fought once, huh?
Yeah.
Because for some reason I thought they rematched.
No, his next fight wasn't until the Marlon Moraes one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he beat him for the
Then
to
bitch
defend his
ass
featherweight
Dylan
title.
Shaw got popped for.
Then he went up
whatever the
to
shit he
bantamweight. He was gonna fight Dillashaw for the title, and then Dillashaw got popped.
Yep.
And then that's when he had to vacate it, and they did the championship, for the vacant belt, right?
Yep.
Is that what it was? Or did Marlon win the interim?
No, Marlon was an interim champ.
So it was vacant.
Yeah, it was a vacant one.
Yeah, and then he beat the shit out of fucking Marlon
It
Moraes.
looked bad for our first couple runs, but then Cejudo just caught his stride and then
That was
proceeded to
another
beat the.
fight that was very close for me for fight of the year.
I feel like that was an underrated fight.
It was very underrated. I don't think Cejudo gets enough credit for the year that he's had, even
Well,
though
it's
he's
because
been
he's just cringe
yelling.
champ, man. No
Yeah,
one
I was
wants
just
to actually admit that he's one of the top fighters. He might be the pound for pound fighter,
I was
the
gonna
number
say
one.
that he's not getting enough credit from other people, but that doesn't mean that he's not giving himself enough credit.
Oh, I feel like he gives himself the most credit.
But no, my
I
my
love him though.
number.
I love how he goes everywhere with the gold medal. Personally,
Yeah, yeah, he's just trying to put on that act.
hey, I feel it. But he's your number two. Who's your number one then?
My excuse me, my number one would probably be Israel Adesanya
I
due to the
like it.
fact that so I wasn't a huge fan of the fight of Adesanya versus Anderson Silva, but I still respect the result. I still respect that he got in there with a prior legend that still can probably kill 99% of the population on this earth.
Yep.
So it was cool for him to start the year out like that, and then he goes and fights the number one contender in Kelvin Gastelum. Wipes him clean.
Mm-hmm.
That was another great fight too. Another fight up there for fight of the year. I just thought that too many people had chosen that already on other shows and shit like that, so I wanted to go outside the box today.
I like it, dude. I like it.
But yeah, so he gets the win over KG, and then he goes and defeats the champ in like the biggest event ever, I want to say, for UFC, which is just absolutely crazy. When
Yeah.
you had that 60,000+ crowd and was that
Marvel.
Australia?
That was a
Yeah.
Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah. So I mean, he just had an insane year. To think that he was by the time he won the belt, I think he was only in the UFC like what, 2 years,
Yeah, I
if
think so.
that.
But
Just crazy
dude,
the run that he
unreal.
had.
It was unreal.
Yeah. Every year has been his year, you could argue, since he's been in the UFC. I mean, he's had a Conor McGregor like kind of rise to stardom.
Mm-hmm.
That's someone that I very much compare him to, or
That's
not really
interesting.
not compare him to, but I see like similarities between the two.
Mm-hmm. I haven't really heard people talk about that comparison, but I agree. I think it's a great one.
Really, I feel like I've heard people make that comparison a little bit, but it's mostly just due to the fact that he's okay to be outspoken. He's okay to
Mm-hmm.
be himself. He's okay to call his shots,
He doesn't give a shit what people think
and
about
he'll
him, and I
deliver
really
on them
respect
too.
that.
Yeah, yeah, he's got that shield that shield of invincibility, that he
Mm-hmm.
thinks that he has right now. That's kind of dope to see because Connor, that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing coming up.
I want to see. Yeah, we'll be releasing that in around the same time as this one goes up. I think.
Oh yeah.
I
But yeah,
like it,
so
man.
that's my fighter of the year,
I love it. Knockout of the year, then real quick.
knockout of the year.
Mm-hmm. There are a few great ones. Boy,
I
you better
really
not
like that.
say the DC one again.
No, I really like that Kevin Lee versus Gregor Gillespie,
That head kick.
that head kick.
Mm.
That
that
just that was clean.
that was something else. I love it. I love that one. If you guys haven't seen that head kick, it's a little less popular than the Jorge Masvidal knee, but that head kick was probably one of the best ones you'll see. I think honorable mention was Valentina Shevchenko knocking the shit out of Jessica Ai, and I was on the canvas
Very similar.
for a solid 2 minutes.
Very similar
Yes,
knockout
it
to
was.
Kevin Lee's.
But Kevin Lee's just had more of a pop, I think.
Yeah.
You could hear it more.
Well, and that's 155-pound men too,
Mm-hmm.
so it's gonna be a little bit heavier.
Of course, of course. Um, those were our fire knockouts of the year. Just before, so that's to wrap up 2019. So our 2019 awards, fire of the year, Blake did DC and Stipe 2. I did Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya. Car of the year, Blake went UFC 241. I went UFC 239. Fighter of the Year and Knockout of the Year. I went Jorge Masvidal. And then Blake went Israel Adesanya, and he went for the Kevin Lee head kick.